In the 1960s, the Ford Mustang helped to define the muscle car class. Now here we are 60 years later, and it's the last muscle car standing now that the Camaro and Challenger are on the way out. Now, Ford calls this the all-new 7th generation Mustang, but in my view it's more of a 6.5 generation because it shares a lot of its underpinnings and engines with its predecessor. But it did make improvements where it really needed it. But we'll get all into that shortly. In the meantime, do us a favor, hit like and subscribe below to get all of our latest reviews. Of course, this 2024 Mustang is unmistakably a Mustang. It carries over all of the traits that make it identifiable, with some subtle differences here and there. The grille is completely different. You have these kind of cutouts here for the 5.0 V8, and these triple LED lights that have these accents that light up at night that look really cool. It's pretty distinctive, and I like that it's a little more upright up front and almost leaning forward. Kind of gives it a little more aggressive stance. Now with a 5-liter V8, you do get these heat extractors that you don't get on the 4-cylinder, and they are functional. From the side view, the changes aren't all that obvious, but it does retain a lot of its character with the long hood and stubbier tail. We of course have this 5.0 badge boldly emblazoned on the side, denoting that this has the V8. And down the side here in the rear quarter, we have a bit of a sharper kickout with this flare. It is a little sharper with a more pronounced corner, which sort of reminds me of a Camaro. I know, sacrilege. Otherwise, in the back here, we do have this deep cut into the taillights that really gives it the stronger character to denote it from its predecessor. It is a little weird though, from the very, very straight back, it looks a little plain. It's not until you get to these angles that it really starts showing its personality. The base engine for the Mustang is a 2.3-liter turbocharged EcoBoost 4-cylinder, and that's good for 315 horsepower. And that's really impressive when you consider that Mustangs from just a few generations ago with the V8 were making less than that 4-cylinder. But of course, the best choice for a Mustang is the 5.0. This 5-liter V8 is good for 480 horsepower. And if you add the optional sport exhaust, you get another 6 horsepower on top of that. Then on top of that, there's the dark horse version with 500 horsepower, and we fully expect to see some Shelby Cobra variants in the future. But which one would you go for? Would you go for the economical and affordable EcoBoost? Or are you going for the red meat and the 5.0 V8? Please say V8. That's the only right answer. Now, attached to these engines are 2 transmissions. With the V8, you can either go with a 6-speed manual, which is the correct choice again, or a 10-speed automatic. If you go for the 4-cylinder, the 10-speed automatic is the only choice. One of the biggest changes for the 24 Mustang was also one of the most needed, and that's the interior. If you look around, it's almost unrecognizable from past Mustangs. Gone are the double bubble dashboard, replaced with this more modern kind of bent glass display for your digital instrument panel, as well as a big 13-inch touchscreen. Now, this touchscreen is the upgraded model. There's another one that actually has its own separate pod. But this, I think it's a pretty good striking look. And everything is really sharp on screen, although it does have a little bit of a delay when you're pushing the buttons. But overall, the menus are well organized and it's easy to get to what you want, especially thanks to this Mustang button down here, which brings up all the apps and performance menus. Now, this is also where you can turn off rev matching and also select what kind of drive mode you want. If you want a stiffer suspension or if you want a louder exhaust, that can all be programmed here. One of the cooler items is the instrument panel that can be customized for a bunch of different themes, including a Fox body theme from 87 to 93. Well, that's some nostalgia for you. One of my biggest complaints for Mustangs in the past were interior materials quality. A lot of that is forgivable because you get so much performance for the money, but at least now, you're really not feeling as penalized. You're not getting the super hard plastics. There's a little bit of give here that there wasn't before. There's a little less creaking too, and even this center console here feels a little more upmarket than just the bare hard plastic that we had before. As a Mustang, it does have rear seats, but they're pretty much useless. I mean, they are very confining. Definitely don't want adults back there, but maybe in a pinch, going to lunch with some friends, it'll work. More often than not, those seats could be used for cargo overflow because the rear seats do fold down. Speaking of cargo, the convertible only has just over 10 cubic feet of cargo, which isn't a lot. But if you go for the coupe, that pumps it up to about 13 cubic feet. In everyday driving, the Mustang is very well mannered. The gearing is actually pretty tall. You can coast pretty long in first gear without having to shift. So that's pretty good for areas where you're in a lot of traffic. It means you're not going to constantly be rowing up and down through the gears. The clutch engagement is super easy and very intuitive. The friction point is right where I want it in the pedal stroke, and there's the right amount of effort too. The shifter itself, it feels great. It's notchy, it's very positive, and it's almost impossible to miss a shift. As far as ride quality goes, sure, the Mustang is firmer than your typical sedan or coupe, but it's not at all intrusive or harsh. It's pretty much what you'd expect from a Mustang. It smooths out the bumps just fine, but you still feel it, so you still kind of have a nice connection to the car and what the tires are doing on the pavement. Of course, there's the sound. Now that was only just partial throttle, but man, that burble from the V8 really changes the character of the Mustang. I mean, that's the one reason that you'd really want to get it over the 4-cylinder. And according to Ford, more than half of Mustang shoppers do opt for the V8, so you'd be in good company. Personally, I think the way to go is the manual transmission. It really gives you a lot more driver engagement, and that's kind of the connectedness that you want from a Mustang. Now, it does have rev-matched downshifts, which will give you these perfectly matched revs whenever you throw down to the next lowest gear, which I'll demonstrate here. I'm in third gear now, drop it down to second, and all you have to do is just pull it down there and then dump the clutch. It's super easy, and to be honest, it's actually better at downshifting than I am, which is a bit of a bummer, but maybe I'm just out of practice. Now, you can disable the auto rev matching, and that's actually what I prefer. I prefer doing that little dance on the pedals to do the heel toe downshift. It's just one of those weird skills that I love using. And one of my favorite features for this new Mustang is what they call the drift brake. Now, this particular GT doesn't have it, but it is this auxiliary brake handle here that locks up the rear wheels so you can live out all your adolescent tire screaming, sliding sideways fantasies, and I love it. I got to ring it out yesterday on a drift course in the 4-cylinder, and my goodness was that fun. I mean, I feel like I get jaded behind the wheel a lot, but that just brought out the giggles. When it comes to seat comfort, the new Mustang, well, I don't think they really changed much when it came to the seat structure. It's just as comfortable and slightly over padded, which is what I like from a Mustang. Of course, you can probably get some sport seats later with a little less padding and a little more, I guess, feedback from what's going on with the road. But one thing I really like about these seats too is the ventilation on these are really effective. They get you cooled down on a hot day like today. But of course, this is a Mustang, and they're meant for fun, so let's ring it out in some curves. Now, I'm on one of my more familiar curvy roads in LA, and you know what? The Mustang, it delivers. It's easy to drive, it's predictable, but above all, it's just fun. And listen to that, it makes the right noises. Yeah, the brakes, here we go. Really good, positive feel. I mean, there's just something about making all this noise and pulling G's that just kind of speaks to me, and most Mustang drivers actually. It's just fun. But even if you're not into carving up the canyons like this, it gives you that kind of sense of stability that'll help you when you need to get out of the way of something. If someone cuts you off, you have the confidence to get around them without losing control. But yeah, this is a Mustang, and I'm not the least bit surprised, but I am very happy about it. After driving the Mustang, I can positively say Ford nailed it. I mean, it is everything a Mustang should be. It's brash, it's bold, it's styled to be recognizable, and it just kind of gives me that heart-pumping feeling when I'm behind the wheel of the 5.0. Now, of course, these changes weren't a huge step forward. They didn't really change the game, but all these little incremental changes really helped to make it the best Mustang that Ford has ever built. Now, the thing is, they really didn't have to push it that far either, because it doesn't have any competition anymore. Its closest competition might be for the 4-cylinder when you have the Subaru BRZ or Toyota 86, but really, it is a different beast altogether. It's a little more brash, it's a little more hunkered down, and quite honestly, it's a big slice of Americana. Prices start right around $32,000 for the base EcoBoost. And to get into the 5.0, you've got to spend about 44 grand to start. That's a lot of performance for that money, and honestly, you'd be hard-pressed to beat it. Of course, I am a bit of a Mustang aficionado, so I can't be completely objective about this, so let me know what you'd do in the comments below. Would you go for the Mustang, or maybe look into some alternatives? And would you go for the manual? Would you go for the 4-cylinder? Would you go for the V8? Let us know in the comments below. We're dying to hear what you have to say. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time in the next review.